Hey, it's been a minute. So many things have changed. I mean, my hair is longer. And I'm in a new place. And you guys can see all of the nerdy stuff that I have. So please don't judge me. Or judge me. Who cares? It's not like I can control you. It's 2024, and I want to recap and rank the movies I saw from last year, 2023. Now, I tend to have some very unpopular opinions when it comes to things, and this video will be no different. I promise you, I don't go against the grain on purpose. It's not something I force to get attention or to stir things up. It's just how I feel. But to sort of balance this video out a little bit, I'm actually going to cover two different lists that I made for the movies of 2023. The first will take up the majority of the video, and it will be my ranking of each movie based on how much I enjoyed each film and how much I was entertained by it personally. But then at the end, I will show you all of my lists compared to a list that I made that I hope you will perceive as a more objective list that will not be based on my enjoyment of a film, but rather how effective it was, the quality of it, and then this list will also take into account the receptions from general audiences and critics. So hopefully this will make me appear a little bit less insane to you guys, but it's up for you to decide. But I did want to try it just so you guys can see the difference in my personal opinions and then what I would say is a more objective evaluation of movies. I saw 14 movies that were released last year, and I will be covering those, so get your pitchforks ready as we dive into the insanity of my opinions, starting with what I enjoyed the least and then working my way up to what I enjoyed the most. Bringing up the rear for 2023's movies is actually the first movie I saw of last year, and unfortunately we kicked it off with a bit of a stinky doo-doo dipey with M. Night Shyamalan's Knock at the Cabin. This is my 14th pick, least favorite movie from the year. I was interested in it because the trailers showed like a intriguing concept, and I was like, okay, let's check this out. And then unfortunately the story kind of fell flat to me. The characters were okay, but just kind of stale. And as it went on, I kept hoping for a twist to happen, but unfortunately it was just kind of straightforward. There really wasn't a twist, if I remember correctly. And by the end of it, I was like, okay, well, that was just a waste of time. So it wasn't as suspenseful or thrilling or interesting as I wanted it to be. And yeah, just kind of boring. Number 13, otherwise known as the movie I enjoyed second to least out of anything I saw in 2023, is the one I will be crucified for. So just brace yourselves. This spot goes to none other than the Golden Globe Best Picture winning, Best Director winning, Best Actor winning, Best Score winning, and Best Actor in a Supporting Role winning Oppenheimer. Yep, I said it. Okay, hear me out. I cannot deny that this is an incredible movie. I cannot deny that Oppenheimer was flawlessly shot, directed, composed, edited, scripted, acted, and everything else. Like, it hit all the marks. But for me personally, I just did not enjoy it. It felt too long, I was bored, and I had a lot of trouble investing myself in these scenes that were just so dialogue heavy, talking about science and politics and Oppenheimer's personal life. I do acknowledge that it perfectly captured the weight of the construction of the atomic bomb and its implementation in World War II. I do acknowledge that it did a perfect job of depicting Oppenheimer's life and showing the moral ambiguity of his actions, how it affected people around him, and the turmoil that he was going through and everybody was going through. It was all done really well, but I just didn't enjoy it. I was not entertained by it. Maybe I just have a short attention span, but unfortunately, I did not like Oppenheimer, and it is coming in at the second to last spot. Now for something you guys will hopefully find a little bit more justified. I have Five Nights at Freddy's at my 12th spot. Honestly, just not a good movie. There were certain aspects I did like about it. I liked Josh Hutcherson's character and his performance, and I liked that they actually kind of developed him a little bit, gave him a little bit of a backstory. And I liked Matthew Lillard's performance in this movie too. The other thing I appreciated was how it was shot. I thought the cinematography was pretty good. And I liked the overall aesthetic of the movie, especially inside the pizzeria. I liked that environment. And I thought they did a really good job with the animatronics, staying true to the original design of those characters and just making them look pretty darn cool. But unfortunately, that's kind of where my praise ends. Five Nights at Freddy's is just stale and dull. Like, it's not exciting or scary, and it's a horror film. And some of the acting is abysmal, some of the dialogue is like atrociously bad. Some of the character motivations and plot devices they use, to put it nicely, are brain dead. Like, just stupid stuff that they were really reaching for. And even though this movie's not like overly long, somehow it still drags. So Five Nights at Freddy's, not a good movie, but I still slightly enjoyed it. Number 11 is another entry I hold a very unpopular perspective on, and it is Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. It hurts me to say that and have it this low, and it hurt me to watch in the theater because I was just so let down by it. I loved Fallout, and ever since Mission Impossible 3, I've loved each entry in the series, and Fallout was like one of my favorite movies ever. And so I was super stoked that they were making another one, went into the theater hyped up, and I was just so disappointed in it. It felt off to me. I felt like I was detached from these characters that I was so emotionally invested in with Fallout. I also was not as gripped with the action as I normally am. I felt like action sequences in this movie were lackluster compared to the ones that just came prior to it, and they were kind of forgettable. The climactic sequence with the train at the end felt like stuff that I had seen 1,000 times before and just didn't stand out to me. I also did not care for the plot devices of the AI and the key. I didn't feel the stakes of everything, even though with other movies, I always felt super tense watching these movies. I didn't care for the villain either. And unfortunately, with these movies, I normally feel super enthralled with the action and the characters, and I feel invested and I care about everything that's happening. But somehow with this movie, I just didn't feel any of that. And I was just kind of bored. And I definitely also felt the 2 hour and 43-minute runtime. Too long for me, and unfortunately, I was really disappointed with this movie. Number 10 on my list is the Super Mario Bros. Movie. I really liked the look and feel of this film, and really enjoyed the soundtrack as it alluded to some of those classic Mario themes. I did grow up with the games, and I am a fan of the games, so it was fun to catch references visually and with the soundtrack that the team made to some of those classic Mario titles. But let's face it, this movie had almost zero narrative substance. Like, they barely attempted to give Mario like an emotional backstory. And I mean, it was kind of harmless, but like, there really wasn't anything to get invested in story-wise. But I mean, not that good, but still, like, it was kind of fun. So that's why it's here and not any lower. Breaking into the single digits of my personal enjoyment rankings of 2023's films is Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. I had heard really positive things about this movie and wanted to give it a shot. And like, early into the movie, I was like, oh, I like this. I'm a big fan of Chris Pine. It was like funny, had some cool action, and even had like a decently compelling backstory for Chris Pine's character. So I was like, okay, this is cool. I like this. And then, I don't know when, but at some point in the movie, I just sort of tapped out, lost interest, and just didn't care what happened anymore. At some point, I think it just started feeling like more of a generic, quirky fantasy adventure movie, and the pacing got slower as it went on. And by the third act especially, I felt like the third act dragged so much and just couldn't end, and I just desperately wanted it to end. So, I mean, this again could be attributed to my short attention span, but I felt like the movie started off strong and ended meh. Air is taking the number 8 spot on my list. I was really excited for this movie because the last time I saw a Matt Damon true story drama, it was Ford v Ferrari, and that movie is one of my favorites to this day. But leaving the theater after seeing Air, I didn't really feel strongly about it either way. It was fine, like, it was well scripted and well acted and whatnot, but it wasn't super enjoyable to me. I didn't really care for the characters and wasn't super invested with the plot. Coming in at number 7 is a movie called A Good Person. It starred Florence Pugh and was sad, and that's why I watched it. I think Florence Pugh is extremely talented, and I like sad movies sometimes. So I gave this movie a shot, and it was pretty good. I thought that the acting all around was pretty solid, and the movie did do a good job of tackling some honestly really dark material and making me think about the moral implications of certain things. So I kind of liked A Good Person, but I didn't like it a whole lot. I can't exactly pinpoint why I didn't like it more, but I would say that I enjoyed it more than I didn't enjoy it, so I would give it like a 6 out of 10. But I will say there were some pretty powerful emotional scenes in it that I liked. Number 6 is going to Wes Anderson's Asteroid City. I didn't really like this movie, but I was entertained by aspects of it. I like Wes Anderson's style of filming and writing. His movies always look very interesting to me, and I am easily engaged with the way he is able to fill a frame visually. I also like the dialogue he writes for characters. His writing is just kind of odd, but always funny to me. And so his scripts are just hilarious a lot of times. These are the things I enjoyed about Asteroid City, along with seeing a plethora of high caliber actors that I enjoy watching. The performances were good, but from a story standpoint, it's just kind of weird. Wes Anderson is a weird director, and that's what the plot was like. I was a little bit intrigued with it, but also was questioning the point of everything. And the whole time, I was just more enjoying the visuals and the dialogue. Cracking the top 5 on my list is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. I've always liked the Ninja Turtles and was excited to see this unique looking animated take on them. For the most part, I think this movie did what it needed to do and was pretty entertaining. I liked seeing the Turtles as younger teenagers. They were actual teenagers and didn't feel grown up. And I thought their dialogue was well written because it felt authentic to how teenagers actually communicate these days. And that was really fun. I also really believed in the relationships between all 4 of the brothers and the camaraderie and jokes they shared. And this is coming from someone who has 3 brothers himself that I've always been really close to, so I really appreciated that aspect of the film. This movie had some good jokes, some good action, and some good emotional beats with Splinter and the brothers and April. The visual style of the characters and setting was also really engaging and fun to watch. Number 4, you may not consider a legitimate movie. It's technically a documentary on Netflix that came out last year, but I threw it in anyway because why not? It's a documentary called Lewis Capaldi, How I'm Feeling Now. My coworker recommended that I watch this because me and her both enjoyed Lewis Capaldi's music, and I had seen interviews with Lewis Capaldi, like his Hot Ones interview and different things on YouTube, and I just think he's so down to earth and hilarious. And I enjoyed this documentary a lot because I got to see more of that from him. Lewis is a humble, talented, and extremely funny guy, but the documentary showed his humanness in a really effective way. It showed his struggle with mental health and Tourette's, and I appreciated it for being so deeply raw. It was nice to see someone who's so big in the entertainment industry, like a giant superstar, be so vulnerable and authentic with his struggles. It helped me feel less alone in my own mental struggles, so I definitely recommend it. My top 3 2023 films are a step above everything I've covered so far, and the movie kicking these off is Godzilla Minus One. Although I'm as big of a fan of giant monsters as the next guy, I hadn't seen a Godzilla film that I would say is genuinely good until I saw Godzilla Minus One. This was a movie you could tell that the people who produced it actually put care into. The story was well fleshed out and the characters were really well developed. The protagonist has a really compelling arc, assisted by a great cast of supporting characters that make you even more emotionally invested in the story. I also appreciated how grounded this movie was in depicting how devastating and terrifying Godzilla can be. This was the best depiction of Godzilla I've seen because he was actually kind of scary. I loved his design and I loved what they showed him do in devastating the people of Japan. Not that you want to see those tragic things, but it made him feel like a real threat. I think the movie had a more traditional take on Godzilla. Like they didn't try to paint him out to be the misunderstood monster who's actually a good guy. They just made him evil, and he was kind of terrifying. And I think the movie as a whole did have kind of a more traditional storytelling approach, but I think that they executed it really effectively. And the whole movie, I was entertained and impressed with what I watched. My second favorite movie from 2023 is Barbie. I had a blast with it and was touched by it. I love any movie that can make me laugh and also want to cry, and Barbie definitely did both for me. Margot Robbie's performance was terrific. Just like everything she's in, she was terrific. I thought she did an incredible job of embodying that character and showing such a great range of emotions and the struggle she goes through. I loved the depiction of Barbie in general and her transition into learning what it means to be human and then deciding to be human. I thought that was a really cool take, and I really appreciated the messages that they shared along with that. I also loved Ryan Gosling as Ken, just like everybody else. He killed me in so many different moments of the movie. And the whole movie to me was just really well made. Well directed, well shot, well scripted, well designed with the costumes and the sets and everything. And yeah, I think it did everything good because Greta Gerwig is such a fantastic director. So this movie was fun, it was sad, and overall it was just really meaningful to me. So that's why it's coming in at the number 2 spot, only outdone by one masterpiece of a film that came out about a month before Barbie. Easily my favorite movie of the year, and the number 1 film of 2023 from those that I saw on my subjective ranking is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I had extremely high expectations and hopes for this movie, and just about in every regard, my hopes were fulfilled. This was just another triumph of technical filmmaking and brilliant storytelling involving deeply compelling characters. It's visually jaw-dropping, musically dynamic, geniusly written, well-paced, and emotionally enthralling. I felt so much for the returning characters of Miles, Gwen, Miles' parents, and Peter B. Parker, but I also loved the additions of new characters like Miguel, Spider-Man India, and Hobie Brown, with Hobie being my favorite of the new characters that were introduced. Every bit of plot, imagery, dialogue, and sound was so deeply thought out and perfectly executed. It's so nice to see movies like these that you know have so much care and attention put into every single frame to make for something that's not only impressive to see, but also just so fun and engaging to watch. I thought it was really cool that this movie starts and ends with Gwen because it's her story just as much as it is Miles. It was really awesome to see her grow through her struggles and her turmoil, learn who she is, and decide where she stands in the midst of everything that's happening. And I really like how they parallel that with Miles, as he too had to learn who he was and what his course of action was going to be, regardless of who had his back. Miles and Gwen both just had really compelling arcs as they had to learn to trust their instincts and be their own people and do their own thing. And I loved the connection that they shared. My favorite parts of this movie are easily those intimate character connection moments, like, for example, Miles and Gwen under the clock tower. And there's another moment that Miles shares with his mom that I adored every moment of. Those are the types of scenes in movies that I live for, and they just make lasting impressions on me, and I think about them all the time. And so just like Into the Spider-Verse, Across was a masterpiece, and in my opinion is leaps and bounds better than everything else that I saw in 2023. That is my subjective ranking of all the films I saw in 2023 based on how much I enjoyed them and how much I personally was entertained by them. But now I would like to show you a comparison of both that list that I just made and what I would consider a more objective evaluation of 2023's films. So I'm going to put this graphic on the screen and talk over it. It will show you my personal list and then what I would consider to be more objective based on how well crafted a movie was, how effective it was, and again, the objective list will take more consideration of general audience's perception of movies and critic reception as well. So I'm going to put this graphic on the screen and I will talk about some of the differences between these two lists. So, yeah, it's different. A lot of these things are not lining up at all, as you can see. But that's just how things tend to be for me. I like things that people don't like as much, or I dislike things more than other people. And so, as we're looking at this, I have to point out the biggest thing is Oppenheimer on my subjective list being down at the 13 spot compared to on the objective list number one. I do just have to acknowledge that it was a masterclass of filmmaking by Christopher Nolan, and I can't really criticize it on a technical filmmaking perspective. So it probably was the best movie of the year, but I still kept Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse right there, right underneath Oppenheimer, because I still think it's almost flawless. And I mean, I would personally definitely prefer to watch Across the Spider-Verse, but even if you don't think it's better, I think we can all acknowledge that Across the Spider-Verse was fantastic in almost every regard. Still, right underneath that, I did have one that stayed consistent, which is Godzilla Minus One. I do think it was just a well-made movie all around, and that's why it stayed there. I had Lewis Capaldi at 4 on my list, but I don't think objectively it's great. It was just more of a story that resonated with me, and that's why I had it there. But then Barbie was at 4. I struggled to put Barbie on this list because I think critics really liked it, and I think most audiences liked it, but on IMDb, I think it only has like a 6.9, which is not great. I do think some people are kind of annoyed with, I don't know, the wokeness of it, I guess, which it didn't bother me that much. But yeah, Barbie, I couldn't decide whether it should go 3 or 4, but that's where it ended up. I put Asteroid City at 5 on the objective list, which is only one spot away from my subjective personal opinion, because again, like, Wes Anderson is just a well-established artist in the filmmaking industry at this point, and I think he really executed his vision extremely well with Asteroid City, but it's not going to resonate with general audiences as much, but I still think it was pretty effective and well made. Air is at 6. Air, I just didn't know. I didn't know what to do with Air. I'm not going to lie. I just put it there because I was like, yeah, people liked it. Like, it got good reception from audiences and critics, and yeah, it's a well put together movie and yada yada yada, but I didn't know where to put that. I think a lot of people would have Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning higher, and this is where I had A Good Person on my list, but you'll see A Good Person is all the way down at 11 on the objective scale. Mission Impossible got really good reception from audiences and critics, and in some senses I do think it was well made, but there was just something narratively for me missing that made it way harder for me to be invested. I didn't care for the characters nearly as much, and if you watched the movie, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's something that happens with one character that really should have got me in the feels, and it just didn't. And it was long. I don't know. I think it could be higher on an objective list, but I still think there were just components of it that didn't super work for me, and that's why I put it there. Whereas like Air, I don't really have like too many real complaints with Air on a storytelling or filmmaking perspective. I put the Lewis Capaldi documentary at 8. And when you're getting into the middle, like when you're in the range from 5 to probably 11 on the objective list, all these movies could probably be rearranged in a different way. Like, they're all very close in quality and effectiveness, in my opinion. But yeah, it was a well-made documentary, and it really humanized Lewis. And yeah. Next, we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which that's a bit of a discrepancy there because I have it at 9 on the objective list, and it was 5 on my subjective list. It was a well-made movie. It was pretty well-paced, and it was fun and decently heartfelt. And I think critics and audiences pretty much liked it. But again, when you're comparing it to these other things, I think probably these are more well-made, more effective films above it. Next, we have Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. This one might be controversial. Some people might say this needs to be higher. I know that fans especially liked it a lot, like fans of Dungeons and Dragons. And in general, audiences liked it. I think it got decent ratings from critics, but it's just another case of me thinking, yeah, these other movies are more profound in some way or higher quality in some way. Then we have A Good Person at the 11th spot. I noticed that it had like pretty good ratings on IMDb. I think it had like a 7.1, but then from critics it only had like a 50. And I feel like to critics it probably didn't stand out very much and was probably perceived as, oh, this is just another like sad funny movie. That's kind of just what I felt like a critic would say about it. They would probably think it's kind of mediocre, and I thought it was a little better than mediocre, but yeah, I had it higher. Then at number 12 we have Knock at the Cabin, and 12 through 14 on the objective list is kind of where things start to get a little more similar to my subjective list, because we have Five Nights there at 12 on my subjective, Five Nights at 13 on the objective, and then the Mario Bros movie was pretty low on my subjective, and it's dead last on the objective. But yeah, Knock at the Cabin, kind of an intriguing concept, but that ends up not being intriguing. But I think it just got sort of mixed reviews from critics and audiences, but it ended up being like generally sort of positive, but not great. Number 13, Five Nights at Freddy's. I think objectively it has a little bit more substance to it than the Super Mario Bros. Movie, and that's why I had it higher. But if you look at ratings for Five Nights at Freddy's, they're pretty abysmal. At least they were on IMDb. Critics kind of just dismantled it and tore it apart. General moviegoers did not like it. I think it had like a 5 point something on IMDb. So if you looked at that, technically Five Nights at Freddy's would fall under the Super Mario Bros. Movie, but I was just thinking about the narrative component, and the narrative component of the Super Mario Bros. Movie is non-existent. That's why I put it at the very bottom of the objective list, even though most people liked the Super Mario Bros. Movie and they thought it was fun. I think critics thought it was mid. And I mean, me personally, I had a fun time with it, but when I'm just thinking of like objectively film quality, how high quality is this? I think Five Nights might have a little bit more quality from storytelling standpoint, and the Super Mario Bros. Movie just had none. It was kind of just fan service. Look at these cool visuals, listen to the soundtrack, and let's have a little jokey laugh about Jack Black. So, yeah. So there you go, everyone. I know that I tend to have some whack opinions on things, so I thought it might help to distinguish the movies of 2023 into two different lists based on, again, how much I enjoyed them personally, and then what the actual quality of the movie was, or the general reception of it. So hopefully it kind of helps balance things out and make things a little bit more clear on my perspective. Please let me know what you guys think of my two lists. I am eager to hear your all's opinions on the movies of 2023. So leave a comment expressing any agreements, disagreements, or additional thoughts you guys have on my video and the movies of 2023 as a whole. I would sincerely love to hear your all's opinions. Most importantly, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope 2024 is treating you good so far. I will see you guys in the next one.